talk to me like that?
Jesus.
See, you are not my friend if I cannot tell you the truth. Abi, I'm not your friend if I cannot tell you the
now.
You. This same you that was Steve's side piece for 2 years before you manipulated him to leave his wife of 13 years for you.
Steve and Miwa are married for 3 years now. Steve has been very abusive towards Miwa, but she has been silent about it. Miwa visits her friends, Laura and Nello, in their salon. Laura and Nello always look surprised anytime Miwa visits them. Reason is that Miwa was a Casanova and Mendel with a lot of men, including her husband. Now Steve was once married and was cheating on his then wife with Miwa. Another reason why Miwa friends always look at her weirdly anytime she is around them. Steve demands homemade food and housewife duties from Miwa. Steve treats Miwa like a slave. Maltreatment from Steve continued to be severe. When it's time for bedroom activities, Miwa just becomes a slave. Steve takes advantage and abuses her, so that means Miwa does not give consent sometimes to their intercourse most times. Few weeks after, Miwa visits her friends and they opt to go for dinner. After eating, Miwa opted to pay, but her card declined for several trials. Miwa did not inform her friends that she did not pay and she went home. Laura called Miwa, asked why she did not make payment for the food. Miwa have a silly excuse of forgetting. Laura and Nello were so confused about the situation because Miwa always flaunt wealth in front of them and she could not make common food payment. Miwa became very angry at Steve why her account was blocked. Steve gave her a slap for that question. Steve told Miwa to never ask him silly questions. In the night, Miwa was traumatized, but Steve was going to have his way either ways. Miwa started looking miserable and worse dressed and marks on her body. Days later, Miwa visits her friends. Laura asks her what happened to her face. Miwa lied that she fell and has been treating herself. Laura asked her if she was sure because the scars did not look like Miwa fell. Nello, on the other hand, did not care or bother to ask because she was going for a date. Miwa went back home to get a whole beating from Steve again. She got home late and Steve was home before her. She prepared food, but Steve threw the food at her, reason being that it was late for the kind of food she prepared. Steve decided to lock Miwa in the house for days. One day Steve was in the supermarket and met Nello. They exchanged contacts and started talking. Nello realized they are getting more comfortable and she revealed to Steve that she is Miwa's friend. Steve was not bored about that information. Steve and Nello started having an affair behind Miwa. The cheating continues and Laura saw it when Steve came to drop off Nello at the salon. Steve and Nello were also making out in the car, so Laura saw everything. Laura confronted Nello why she's doing this to Miwa. Nello angrily said, Miwa took or rather snatched Steve from his first wife. She is doing the same thing to Miwa. Steve and Nello took their relationship serious and started doing things in public. But when Steve gets home, he beats and maltreats Miwa. Things were getting worse for Miwa. She visits her friends. Laura was the only there and she saw the scars again. So she asked what happened but demanded to be truthful to her. Then Miwa told Laura that she is not happy in the marriage and don't know what to do. Steve has changed and beats her at the slightest provocation. Laura asked Miwa to have a heart-to-heart conversation with Steve and if it's something she can do to make her marriage better. Miwa took that advice serious and asked Steve what went wrong in their marriage. Oh my God, was the response from Miwa after Steve slapped her for asking that question. Miwa kneeled down and continues to ask questions, but Steve was not in the mood. Everything about that turned to confrontation, arguments and abuse. Sadly, Miwa started packing her things to leave, but Steve prevented. Next day, just when Steve to work, Miwa got the courage to pack her things and left the house. Steve got back home after searching and not finding Miwa. He did not even bother to report to police or anything. Days later, Steve looks unbothered by Miwa's disappearance. Steve continues his relationship with Nello. Then he dropped her off at the salon again. This time Miwa saw them because she was at the salon with Laura. Miwa confronted Nello what she is doing with her husband. Nello told her she is dating Steve and will take over where she left. Laura tried to separate them as they started fighting and throwing items at each other. Nello told Miwa that she was a side chick to Steve when she was married, so she's just doing the yes as Mr. Thing to her. After all, Miwa broke in a good marriage and that's what happened to her. Nello left them. Laura started telling Miwa that Nello is saying the truth after all. Miwa broke a marriage and became a madam. Nalo is doing the same to her. Few months later, Nalo shows up at the salon and gave Laura an invitation card. The invite was about her wedding with Steve. Laura was so shocked that she could not advise or alter a word. Then Nalo told her she needs her shares of the salon business, so Laura planned to make a business agreement to pay her off. Miwa later that day came around the salon and Laura told her about Nelo's marriage to Steve. Miwa was happy with herself, and she made confessions to Laura. She told Miwa that Steve is abusive and manipulative. She wished him all the best and that they were admiring her, but she was suffering in the marriage. Nalo does not know what she is getting herself into. A month later, Steve and Nalo got married and everything was going on well till one day. They returned from an event together and Steve got angry at Nalo for some she did at the event. As they got home, Steve slapped and started beating the hell out of Nalo. His complaints were that Nalo was too comfortable with men at the event. Steve smashed Nelo's phone and abused her in the night as well. This abuse continues for a while and Nelo took matters into her hand. One fine morning, as Steve prepares to go to work, Nelo prepares breakfast for him. After eating, Steve fell asleep and woke up hours later. Nelo tied him up and was filming him. Nelo was holding a knife at him and was threatening him to never in his life touch her again. Beat her or abuse her of any kind will not happen again. Nelo told Steve if this was what he was doing to his previous wives, she is not going to tolerate that from him. She is going to teach him how to treat a woman with respect. Nelo went on to tell Steve if he behaves otherwise, she will send this video to the blogs, and he will lose his job and everything that comes with it. Steve promised to behave and be a better person. After that day, Nalo became the madam of the house and Steve is now the understanding husband. That was Steve's karma for treating his first wife and Miwa badly. Miwa also got her karma for snatching someone's husband. Thanks for watching this recap. This channel brings you the best Nollywood movies. We save you time and money. Don't forget to subscribe and like our videos for more.
You sit here telling me about married men.
Okay, guys, this is enough. This is enough. Nelo, you should find a way to go and